Good morning. My name is Anna Yang, and for my research topic, I decided to focus on sexual harassment and the activism that occurs through social media. But first, I'm going to give some background on the media's impact on such activist movements. The civil rights movement that marked the 1950s through 60s was spurred by a need for reform and equality in a time of great racial discrimination. It was led by the esteemed Martin Luther King Jr., who was further jailed for his actions. And on one such occasion of conviction, King wrote the now widely known letter from Birmingham jail, in which he famously penned the words, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," and established the necessity for his intervention in solidifying equality for all. This letter, along with his many speeches, became widely circulated throughout the media, and its message maintains relevance to date as movements continue to push for social reform and equality, utilizing the media to expand and influence and continuing the fight against injustice for all. And in the past decade, the platform of social media has become increasingly utilized in promoting such nonviolent activism, which brings me to my research question. To what extent has social media proved beneficial in serving as a platform of activism against sexual harassment and violence? From an environmental perspective, social media has become increasingly utilized in publicizing experiences of sexual assault due to its environment being one that is virtual rather than within the physical boundaries of the world. Consequently, it capacitates users to connect in their common experiences, users who otherwise may not have met due to a geographic difference in locations. Dr. Edward Kessler further elaborates upon this in his essay, Social Media and the Movement of Ideas, as he writes, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube enables users to connect at an unprecedented level of speed and accessibility, where everyone is a publisher, and connections form between those with whom they cannot physically communicate. This democratization of information thus allows the publication of any and all information to be shared and spread within the vastness of the online world. It further retains the ability to reach topics that remain traumatic or difficult to express in interactions that occur rather in person. Such was exemplified through the burgeoning of the Me Too movement in October of 2017, when the actress Alyssa Milano took to Twitter to address the issue of unaccounted cases of sexual harassment and assault. Tweeting, "If all the women who have been sexually harassed or assaulted wrote Me Too as a status, we might give people a sense of the magnitude of the problem." Her post received 500,000 responses within the first 24 hours of its publication. With social media catering to such a widespread audience in a rapid amount of time, physical boundaries and borders are dissipated, and connections are seemingly one click, like, or post away. This far-reaching and fast-paced environment enabled the exponential momentum of the Me Too movement to take place, along with the overall increase in survivors of sexual harassment and assault to feel empowerment under a single hashtag and voice their own experiences, while also holding their offenders accountable. Which leads me to a social and cultural perspective. And however, the Me Too movement and other social media campaigns have received a sense of backlash in their gray area in defining what constitutes as sexual assault. The New York Times describes a consequence of this development as male employers feeling a sense of apprehension to mentor their female workers. It finds that half of male managers felt uncomfortable with women in engaging in common work activities such as working one-on-one or socializing. However, despite this controversy involved, the Me Too movement and other social media campaigns have proved effective in uniting survivors, amplifying their voices, and exacting justice upon employers or high-ranking offenders. Data from a firm based in New York finds that in the 18 months after the Me Too movement's outbreak, 414 high-profile executives or employees were outed, with 190 of these being fired or having resigned, and an additional 120 facing suspension, leave, or further investigation for their actions. Through social, Sarah Draft describes a causation behind this as survivors wanting most the acknowledgement of what happened to them, the debunkment of those men in high prestigious jobs who believed a consequence of which was access to women's bodies. In a society where survivors are provided no real options for justice and the court systems and legislations neglect such cases, while human resources serves as more as a tool for the boss than the exploited employee. Through social media, not only are these offenses made public, but these movements have resulted in upheaval and authority as increasing numbers of perpetrators are outed and fired, justice is served at last, and remaining offenders are made wary of the jeopardization of their careers that a single post or hashtag may reap. In terms of solutions, this activism through social media has further consolidated itself into other movements and campaigns such as Time's Up, the solution-based, action-oriented next step to succeed the legacy of Me Too, and completely change the experience of women in the workforce, as it is aimed at passing legislation and changing policies to address the systematic inequalities that include inefficient representation, the gender wage gap, and inequitable distributions of power, under which such conditions breed an environment for sexual abuse to occur. Further, a legal route is underway as in combating sexual harassment and violence that has been sparked by this widespread awareness made possible by social media. As, for example, California has already passed legislation such as the Senate Bill 1343, which requires new regulations on sexual harassment and training, along with the Senate Bill 1300, which prohibits the signing of agreements between employer-employee that releases the employer from claims of sexual harassment in exchange for incentives such as employment and a raise. However, the limitations remain that social media alone is not enough to completely end the sexual harassment that occurs in the workforce, as reformed legislation and enforcement of the law remains necessary to be passed in other states and countries. While it has proved beneficial in proliferating awareness, through activism through legislation and enforcement of the law must be the next step to fully elicit change for victims of sexual harassment and assault. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Your first oral defense question: how valid and reliable are the sources you used? How do you know, and which sources did not work?
I personally felt that the majority of my sources were truly reliable, as before even putting together my research paper, I searched thoroughly through academic journals to really get a sense of background for what I was going to delve into for my topic. And upon this, I went through their references and searched through their articles that they use. And only after searching extensively through academic journals and reliable sources, I went to periodicals to further investigate factual information along with real-life experiences. And the periodicals I used were of reliable sources such as the New York Times and Washington Post, which have extensively been utilized in the past. The sources that I felt were not reliable were sources such as feminist blogs and other social media sources that, although I could have used them in evidence as some types of social media activism, I felt they were too much opinionated and biased to be actually credible or have or prove efficient in providing me factual information.
Thank you. And your second question: how does your conclusion respond to any of the other research or sources you examined?
My conclusion responds to the other sources that I examined, as it also serves as a conclusion to the counter-argument, as while while legislation and enforcement of the law is necessary in limiting the sexual harassment and assault that can occur in the workplace, and that does occur without being outed or exposed, it also will help against male managers feeling that sense of discomfort in mentoring their female employees, which leaves them at a disadvantage in comparison to their male counterparts, as now these male managers will know that through the sexual harassment training and their own training that is now being imposed by the law, they will feel a sense of ease in knowing that what they are doing is not crossing a line of harassment or making their female employee feel uncomfortable in any way.
Thank you.